Towards the end of 2011, I hired my first coach. I took my bank account and I gave it to this guy and I said, I want to be like you. I received a PDF document. These are your meals. There is no wiggle room. I killed myself in the gym. I was eating what felt like cardboard on a day-to-day basis. I won't ever let anyone experience what I did.
Let me ask you a question. You've been struggling with fat loss your entire life. You walk into the gym. You're looking for a personal trainer and trying to find someone. How do you choose that person? I would say it's very difficult. You might walk up to someone, you're struggling to get in shape, you're struggling to lose fat, and the person that you're hiring has never really had trouble with that. The people who have struggled, I would argue, make the best coaches. It's because they're hungrier and they had to dive deep. When I was looking for a coach, I was looking for the type of person who had struggled. And I was very fortunate to have had, I think it was about 50 or 60 people apply. But one of them in particular stood out. That guy's name is Sam. And in fact, he was so good that I decided to take him on despite the fact that he is in the UK, which means that I'm now going to have to sign up for late afternoon phone calls, which is something that I basically never do. I'm used to my early morning phone calls with my American colleagues because I live in Tokyo. But that's how good he is. It is my absolute pleasure to bring him on the podcast today. Sam, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of the team and the journey.
Andy, thank you for having me. Pleasure.
So, where is it that you're from?
I am from the south coast of England in the United Kingdom. Sometimes it's sunny, most of the time it's not. But yeah, I live on the seaside in a city about an hour and a half from London.
I see. Single, married, like what's your situation? What do you like to do on the weekend? Give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with my longtime girlfriend for nearly a decade now. If I'm not in the gym or doing some sort of research, it will be a movie, it'll be coffee, or it'll be reading a book. That's generally where you'll find me.
You've been in the industry for a little over a decade now. When was the first time that you went to the gym and what happened there?
Yeah, so the very first time I went would have been 2010. It was off the back of watching a film with my girlfriend at the time. If you know it, Twilight, New Moon, there's a lot of jacked guys in there. I felt very inadequate very quickly. I was like, I've got to go get this sorted. My girlfriend was fawning over them. I rocked up to a bodybuilding gym. It's the only one in our town. And I looked through the door. I was like, that's not for me. Well, everyone in there was twice the size of me. Didn't make it through the door. So then I went to a leisure center, probably the equivalent of a Life Fitness. I went in, signed up, and just started doing what everyone does, which is walking around the gym aimlessly, getting on machines, thinking that kind of worked. I kind of felt something. I had the itch pretty much straight away.
Is a Life Fitness something like a Planet Fitness?
Planet
like
Fitness. That's the one, yeah.
Okay, quite welcoming, but not particularly... Well, I suppose it's going to vary. A welcoming environment, but not a particularly serious training environment?
Correct. You know, you could walk through those doors and not feel out of place. I think it's sort of welcoming for everyone, isn't it? Which is probably what I needed at the time, to just get in and not feel that overwhelm.
Yeah, I remember that feeling of being lost. I can still picture it now. There was during my induction, I was shown, I think it was 12 or 16 machines. I forget the name of the company. Cybex, was it maybe? And the guy had a clipboard and he showed me all 16 machines and then he gave me that piece of paper and I thought, oh, okay, so I'd do machine 1 through to 16. So I literally did. I went and sat and did machine 1 through to 16 and that was like my first month or whatever it was. I was 16, I had no idea. But I just knew that I had to get bigger.
Yeah. The guy that showed me around was in his 60s and he was actually really jacked. And he said, what are your goals? I said, I want to get big. And then I'd forgotten about this, but you bringing that up, it's just reminded me. He started reeling off a really sort of bro diet. So like it was the chicken, the rice, the broccoli. It was oats in the morning. And so obviously I did go and do that, but I didn't have the training knowledge to support all this food I was eating. So that first few months didn't actually go that well for me. I just got very fat very quickly.
So could you describe your physique when you sat there, you're in the movies, you're watching this film, some vampire question mark dude has
The werewolf
taken his
guy.
shirt off. Werewolf guy. Okay, I didn't even know that. Sorry. So there's your girlfriend is obviously fawning over this guy. She probably doesn't pass a comment to you. They tend to be more sensitive about these things than us, don't they?
Yeah.
And so then what? You look down and what are you seeing here? Because obviously we're the harshest judge of ourselves. Like, what is there?
So prior to that, I would have been 18 at the time, 17, 18. I grew up in my teens quite overweight, actually. I was quite a chubby kid, but as I went from sort of 15 to 17, a lot of that weight it fell off me quite naturally. However, I still had a bit of a tire and the lower back fat. And when you sat down, I would have the rolls. So standing up was quite deceiving because I'd grown quite tall. But when I looked down at my stomach, you can see in my facial expression, it was rolls, but then my arms were skinny. I didn't have any shoulders. My chest looked more like boobs. It was that kind of vibe. Seeing someone on the screen have, the complete opposite to that, and knowing that that's the kind of thing that at the time was becoming really popular. The Hollywood physique was starting to really come into its own, and I'm a big movie guy, so I was seeing that all the time. I was like, I want to feel like that. I don't want to feel insecure about when I look in the mirror, when I catch my reflection. And I think that gets you in the gym, right? But it doesn't keep you there. And then I become obsessed with understanding how things worked, why things went that way. Why would you have to do it that way and not this way? Why does that work more than this thing? And yeah, I was bitten very quickly.
What was your height and weight then, do you recall? And what is it now, generally, when you're not... I know that you're currently doing a photo prep phase, so could you just compare for us?
Yeah, so I would say in my normal day-to-day life, I hover around sort of 75, 76 kilos.
Okay, so about 165 to 170.
Correct.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's sort of where I sit, quite happy. I won't need to be tracking. I just eat intuitively.
And your height?
5'10".
5'10", right,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Yep.
And that's intuitively where I sit now. When I started, I was 85 kilos. And that was not muscle. So my initial
So that's about 190 pounds, something like that.
Yeah, so my first fat loss phase, if you will, I suppose when I started, I was just playing around. But it wasn't fat loss because I thought I was eating to lose weight. Because I did what the guy told me to do, but I was eating way too much, not really training properly. And that was the sort of horrible combination, even though I was loving being in the gym. So yeah, 85 kilos. I was probably about 5'8" at the time. And a year after that was when I wanted to actually see a result from this, which is when I hired the coach.
So what do you think in terms of like muscle gain since then and fat loss? What do you think is probably true there?
Probably gained at least 10 to 15 pounds of muscle.
I've got in my mind something like 40 pounds of fat loss and 15-ish, perhaps a little higher in muscle gain over that time.
Yeah, the 40 pounds mark for fat loss would be about right, yeah.
Okay. So how long until you hired a coach? And how old are you at this point?
So 2010, I'm about 18. And then it was about 18 months later, towards the end of 2011, I hired my first coach. And it was actually when social media was really starting to become a thing, like Instagram specifically, like a really visual platform. Up until that point, it was Facebook, fairly written. And I'd been following a particular person for a while. He'd become a WBFF pro at the time from Ireland. His physique was just utterly insane. Insane. And I was like, that's what I want to look like. It's almost what you described at the top of the pod. That's what I want. He's running an 8-week abs program. I'm going to jump on that. And at the time, I wasn't, I was coming out of college. I had a job, but I was working in a chip shop, of all places, on the beach. I wasn't paying that great. So I took my bank account and I gave it to this guy and I said, I want to be like you. And he was like, let's do it.
Right, so just to paint the picture here, chip shop, we're talking fish and chips,
Correct.
probably sold doner kebabs. So you probably had free meals there as well, which isn't ideal. Like the worst kind of food environment that you're in. And
Correct.
also added onto that, fresh out of college or about to be, and you're on minimum wage pretty much.
Correct.
So you then went and spent all of your pennies on this coach.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah.
So this describes to me the level of pain or the level of want that you had for this. And I can relate. So when my first job ever was at a supermarket called Tesco, think of Walmart. And I was 16 when I got that job. I believe I was 17 actually, not 16 earlier when I first went into the gym. I had a 7 3/4 hours per week. I was earning £3.12 per hour, which I think is about $5, maybe a little bit less. So I think in a month I had £110. That's ringing in my head for a reason. And it was £36 was my membership there. So it's slightly over a third of my take home I was spending because I was absolutely desperate. Now, I didn't even think of hiring a coach. Where this idea came because you saw Instagram, was it?
Yeah.
You saw someone on Instagram?
Exactly that. Yeah. I definitely have that. I'm the start of that generation, I think, of where it really started to become a visual social media world, and your body was selling at that point. And I bought into that.
Wonderful. Okay. So in your mind, you've now hired the best.
Correct.
You've got a problem. You've hired the best. What happened?
So we didn't even have a conversation. There was no back and forth. I could just buy it, which looking back should be my first red flag. But I received a PDF document that had my meals, and it was, these are your meals. There is no wiggle room. Okay. You can use salt, but please use 1 calorie sprays if you're going to cook.
Yeah.
And I'm not joking. The drinks you're allowed, ready? Water and green tea.
Phew. Okay.
So that
green
was my
tea's
meal
good.
plan.
I mean, it tickles my Japanese side, right?
To be fair, I did actually throughout that process, because you have to understand that at this point, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Yeah. I'm gonna do what this guy tells me to do because I've just paid him a chunk of cash, and he looks like that. So my God, he must be right.
Yeah.
That's the attitude I went into this process with, which is why the PDF meal plan worked technically. I went into it with 100% effort, killed myself in the gym. I was eating what felt like cardboard on a day-to-day basis. There was very little pleasure from that process of eating. It was very functional. But I did get in very good shape very quickly relative to where I was starting from. I lost a lot of weight.
Perfect. So the coaching worked.
Well, I believe so, right? The issue was there was no communication. It was every single check-in would be keep going. Didn't make one adjustment to the plan because my looking back, I know now that when you put someone's calories that low to start with, in 8 weeks, they're not going to need an adjustment because you're eating dust and air. Right?
Okay.
It's harder to, you won't need to make an adjustment because you've gone from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. So every check-in was an email saying, keep going, keep going. I think it was the last 2 weeks where I got an adjustment to my oats from 40 grams to 25. And I'm not joking. Like that was the sort of, there was no explanation. And I didn't get any sort of, here's what to do next. I was very lost at the end of that coaching process. I had the physique. I was very lean. And I was like, okay, cool, I have this. But Andy, it was gone in about 4 weeks. I rebounded super hard. Super hard. I had no bridge to normality, to sustainability. And to say that I was burnt from that process, like it put me off doing anything like that for a long time. I was like, well, if this is what it's like, I guess I've got to do this myself. And that's when I become very hyper focused on research, books, textbooks, internet, whatever I could find to figure this out myself, because I wasn't going to do that again.
I see. I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, so you decided that online coaching wasn't for you. You're going to have to do this yourself. I mean, interestingly, we're now sat here 12 years later, right? I mean, you're a coach, right?
Yeah.
Or in fact, it was obviously less time than that before you actually became a coach. But okay, so you start studying yourself because you feel that there's no other way forward. You've just rebounded, sadly. So what was next? How did you go about studying?
You could say somewhat naively, I took the process from what initially got me to the coach I had at the time, which was, well, who out there looks how I want to look, but actually has, shall we say, gravitas or authority in the space. So this would have been 2012, and actually YouTube fitness was just about to start the takeoff. That to what it is now compared to what it was then, there was a handful of, I don't like the word influencers because at the time I don't think that's what they were, but I'm talking about Matt Ogus in particular was a real big inspiration to me. Even though he's very genetically gifted, he was very, very high quality free information that I ate up every single video. And that introduced me into Eric Helms and the 3DMJ guys. And that was my into evidence-based fitness in 2012, 2013. And you know the expression, you can go a mile wide or a mile deep. I went a mile deep with the evidence-based community at the time, different forums, different people in the space. And it didn't feel like I was getting confused, but I was certainly getting like, wow, there's so many different ways you can do this. And so I became a guinea pig for myself over the sort of 2012, 2013, 2014 period where, Andy, let me tell you, I tried so many different training protocols, so many different nutrition protocols. I was a one-man experiment for about 3 years, whether it was intermittent fasting, whether it was keto. I did all of it, I would say, at various different points. And I was trying to find the cross-section of maximal results and maximal enjoyment. And that has never really left me. I've always been tinkering. I've always been trying to stay up to date. The one thing, I suppose, in that time period that was starting to hold me back, or I started to realize, was that as my information grew and my knowledge grew, my muscles weren't, because I would break down in injuries. That's kind of where I was at around 2014. It was like, okay, cool. So I can get really strong. I can push my body weight up. But at a certain point, it was like I had a ceiling. And it was whenever I got to a certain weight on a lift, my joints would go, and I could never get past that. And I tried for a long time. And I would say it's only really been the last 3 or 4 years where I've accepted that, hey, I can get in photo shoot condition and be the lean guy, but I'm never going to be the jacked guy.
Well, the strongest guy, perhaps, is the better way of putting it. I mean, you are quite jacked. It's just you're able to do that through other means.
Sure.
You're able to now accept that you don't have to be... You're able to let go of this idea that you should be squatting a certain amount and you should be deadlifting a certain amount, and accept that it's okay to not do these 1 rep maxes in this lifts. It's okay to do higher reps and higher rep sets for many of your lifts. That's something I've been through as well. I totally get it.
It's frustrating though, but yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's so frustrating, man. Oh, it's so frustrating, especially when like a bunch of your friends are powerlifters, right? And like really good ones. No, I get it. Yeah.
Because you know, right? You know what you need to do to get there. I think that is for coaches and for professionals in their respective fields, that's got to be the biggest frustration, when you know the way and it's not your fault you can't get there. So it takes time to accept that, I think.
Yeah, there's a massive degree of imposter syndrome that goes on. I know that's something I went through. But anyway, look, this isn't a pod about me, it's about you. So you're now studying. How is your body changing, and then what happens next?
Yeah, so I would say around 2017, I'm noticing that the scale weight's not really changing, but the muscle mass is coming on, and I'm seeing abs on a more regular basis. You know, I'm not having to diet to get to see visible abs, which for me was always my metric of success. Like, can I wake up every day and see my abs without having to feel like I'm on a perma diet? And it was around this point where I did my first shoot. Looking back, I probably wasn't as lean as I should have been, but it was my first attempt, and I self-coached. Okay. I got lean enough to hire a photographer. I went through a photo shoot. I put them on Facebook, and then friends and family were like, can you help me do that? And I was like,
Yeah. Okay.
can I? Can I? Let's find out. So for free, I coached one of my best mates. He was actually very similar to where I was, skinny fat. And in about 12 to 13 weeks, we got him abs. And that experience, that experience of genuine coaching, not go again. Yeah. I didn't kill him. I didn't make him hate his life. To see him go through that transformation and take pictures with him and seeing the smile and seeing someone else get bitten by the gym bug, that was something that has stayed with me, and I think will stay with me forever. And it was from that point I was like, okay, if I can do it for my best friend, if I can do it for my cousin, if I can do it for my sister's boyfriend, let's start posting about this. Let's start putting content out, and let's get some formal level of qualification behind me. In 2018, I go through Luke Johnson's Shredded by Science Academy, which Eric Helms taught in. I went through that process, loved it, got that. And then it was all systems go into content creation and starting to help as many people as I can.
And so at that time, you have a full-time job?
Yes.
Elsewhere? Yeah?
Elsewhere, outside the industry.
What is it that you were doing?
Yeah.
And then when did that change, or did that change?
Yeah. So I suppose a kind of parallel story to this is that imposter syndrome taking form in the sense that I never know whether the skinny fat version of me that I've been most of my life could do this as a full-time thing. So I studied in a completely different field. I went down the route of law. I was studying to be a legal executive at a local council. I did that from 2019 to 2021. And I was progressing quite nicely. The thing about law is that there has very good parallels to health and fitness, because you put the work in, you put the hours in, you put the dedication. There's a very clear pathway to success if you follow it. And it got to the point where I was coaching about 20-ish clients, and the income was starting to outweigh my legal job. And the only reason I probably didn't jump ship sooner was because pressure from family, law, prestigious. It's a good job. It's a good career. It's a steady career. Playing on your laptop, I quote, is not a steady career and a long-term thing. So for me, I balanced that for probably longer than I should have done. But yeah, 2021, I blew past 30 clients, still didn't leave. 2022, I left.
Well, you would have had to at that point to keep the quality high, I imagine, right?
Exactly that. I was doing 6 hours of check-ins on a Saturday and working Monday through Friday. I wasn't prepared to provide a service that I was not 100% proud of because of where I've been. That's all. My service delivery has always been a proud point of mine, because I won't ever let anyone experience what I did.
Yeah, you mentioned to me that your average client retention, did you say 9 months?
9 to 12 months.
Or was it 10? 9 to 12?
Yeah, depending on where they are when they start, yeah.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Funnily enough, a couple of days ago with Coach Matt, we were looking at the numbers and comparing where he's at and where I'm at, because frankly, we need to look at some performance metrics so that we can then evaluate you fairly, right? And I remembered you saying 9 or 10 was in my head from when we were interviewing a month or so ago. And, Matt and I dove into the figures, and I think I'm a 10.4 and Matt's a 10.2 months on average for our clients. And I thought it was 7.
Right.
And yeah, I hadn't delved as deeply as that. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good. It made me feel pretty good. And, it puts your work also in perspective as well, because people that just don't stay if they wouldn't be happy. I think these numbers are just silly long compared with the average. What is it that you think that you do that makes people stay around? Is it the fact that you're giving exceptionally good meal plans and then telling them, yeah, carry on? Like, what what are you doing, Sam? Like, what's your secret whisper? Tell us your knowledge, my friend.
I will reveal the secret source of
Please.
long-term coaching clients, and pardon my French, but it's giving a shit. It's giving a genuine shit about what happens to someone once they transform, get in unbelievable shape, and not just dropping them because your job is done, they've got what they want, where's the next client transformation that I can get? I placed so much emphasis with my clients on what happens after the diet. I am constantly going at them in every check-in that when we get here, that is the start of the journey, not the end. Yeah. Because that was my biggest pain point, right? That was my biggest itch that never got scratched over a decade ago. It's not pushing someone to the edge of the mountain and not pulling them back, right? Which is what happens when you get to very low levels of body fat. You know, you don't have as much control. Your body is wanting to do certain things that your brain doesn't want. And my job as a coach is to help them navigate what happens next. And so if someone takes 3 to 6 months to get in that shape, it makes no sense for them to leave at that point. And I'm constantly reassuring them that, yes, you're hungry now, but when we transition out of this, you're going to be able to eat more. You won't have to be stressed because you'll have all these habits in place. But that post-diet period, I place so much emphasis on that they believe me.
Let's dive in. Why is it important?
I truly believe that with a fairly proficient coach, anyone can get in great shape for a small period of time, because you just need enough focused effort, enough momentum, enough motivation to get started, and then eventually you get the results, right? But here's the problem, is that if you get it too quickly, you don't actually understand the underlying mechanics of why you got there and how to stay there. And there's a different set of habits and principles that someone has to inhabit to stay there versus getting there. I think it's a different set of systems. And I can't teach you the maintaining systems whilst I'm getting you in the deficit system, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 So, you know, I'm good at my job, right? But I can't teach both at the same time. So we go through the fat loss, and then I teach the maintenance habits so that they will never have to go through this process with anyone again. They have autonomy. That is the goal. The goal is not how shredded can I get someone. The goal is how lean can I get someone to where they're happy and confident in their life, they have more energy, and how do I keep them there? And how do I enable them to keep themselves there for the rest of their life?
And so, ladies and gentlemen, you can hear that this is the reason that I hired Sam. Same philosophy. Coaching that is designed with the client leaving us in mind. Now, okay, you've got a booming business, and yet here you are, where you've joined the Rip Body team. What happened there? People are, obviously, they're going to be curious. I know I certainly was. Yeah, tell us. Don't hold back.
Yeah, there's a couple of inflection points in my life in the last 2 or 3 years that have steered me into a trajectory that I didn't see coming. In 2023, it would have been about 6 to 8 months after I've taken the jump from leaving my full-time job. I got into a coaching space, or a mentorship space, which was outside of health and fitness, but it was for business. And to say I took my eye off the ball would probably be the right way to phrase it. My passion for coaching become trumped by my need to satisfy numbers on a spreadsheet financially. I started to grow my business. The focus went from making sure the type of client I was bringing in was 100% someone that I could help based on an interview process, to I need to sign this client up because I've got profit margins to hit. And there was a subtle shift for about 8 months from coach to business owner. And I did have a real hard time trying to balance both. And I will admit that business owner won for about 5-6 months. I scaled to 60 clients, which is a lot for one person to be handling at the level of support that I was delivering. I was then at a point where I was going to hire a coach. And in this particular mentorship space, what they would suggest is, instead of hiring like you've done, Andy, like a really strict process of, I need to make sure, and I mean that in the best way, right? I want people to understand. I want people to understand that I worked very hard to get here to this point. It's not luck. This is not luck that we're in this podcast,
Right.
Which is the opposite of how this mentorship would teach you to hire, right? It was,
go on.
This is
Really?
interesting. Yeah. So here's the advice they give you, right? It's,
If I may, like you are my reputation. In fact, what was the first thing I said to you a couple of days ago? Who was it that I quoted? Do you remember?
Warren Buffett.
You don't have to remember the quote exactly.
Yeah,
it was Warren Buffett. And do you remember the quote?
20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to destroy it. Around that, something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. One of the first things I said after we'd already said, yeah, we're going to work together, but it's in our onboarding call. I was going through the 5 core values of our company. And that was the first thing I said. And that's how I feel. So, you are representing the company, you're representing me. How you operate is my reputation, and my reputation is a very good one, and I've worked very hard for it. And so, and that means that when I have you as a coach, people know that you are good, right? Because otherwise, there's no way I would have put you there. But you're saying that you were recommended. Wait, what? Like, surely you weren't recommended not to have standards. What's the advice here? Like, I'm quite struggling to understand because I just can't imagine it.
Andy, I'm not going to hold back. I'm going to tell you the exact strategy that they give to help coaches scale. Is you take one of your best performing clients, and you promote them to a success coach within your business.
Okay.
Which at the time, I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. They know my brand, they know me, they know my methods. But here's the problem. They're not a coach.
No.
They haven't gone through a decade of experimentation, research, struggle. They may have gone through struggle, but not to learn. That's why they're with me, right? But the caveat to this with me is that the 2 people that I did promote into success coach roles are now PTs.
Great.
And I'm very proud of that.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I went about it the wrong way, 100%. Okay. Because I took advice, because they were cheaper. And the idea was like, you just coach them for free whilst they're taking on some of your clients at a lower level. And that was how you scale without spending a lot of money, freeing up your time, and then going from coach to CEO. And I got stuck. I got stuck there for a little while. I got stuck. And in some respects, I'm grateful for that time because I learned a lot about the business side of things. But what I couldn't see at the time, because I was stuck in it, was I was focusing too much on that. And other people in my life were noticing as well. I did become quite, not materialistic, but I understood the finances of a lot of different things that suddenly became important to me that weren't before. So other people picked up on it. And it was when I promoted a client into that success coach role, it didn't go particularly well. Shock. They couldn't coach, right? So then I'd obviously let them go. I took back all the clients. And then it was that point, because it ruined the relationship. And that client had been with me for 2 years. And it was that point I realized this is not where I need to be. I shouldn't be taking this kind of advice because it's not sitting well with me. It's hurting. It's not helping anymore. So I left. I left that mentorship space to go back to more of a coaching first, finances second, because that's what I'd done for 5 years prior to that point, and it worked out okay.
Yeah.
And then I suppose the universe has a way of giving out karma, if you will. And in the summer of 23, my family, we went through really dark stuff. Personal losses, plural, one big one in particular. And something that your audience might want to know about coaching is that empathy is, in my opinion, one of your biggest gifts as a coach. You have to be empathetic to understand, to put yourself in your client's shoes. And I lost that almost overnight. And if I can't have that, I can't do my job effectively. And so that 55-ish client number over the space of about 3 or 4 weeks in the summer of 23. I reduced that down to 22. And I'd gone from being so focused on money to then going, I don't care at all. And I dropped my income in half, in a month, because that's the headspace I was in. And the 22 clients that I kept had all been with me around 7 months or more, because they did that level of, they still needed coaching, they still need support, of course, but it wasn't the baby steps. And that's what I did to myself in a way. And I don't regret that decision. Sometimes I wonder if I could have done it a different way, but I knew what my capacity was at that point, and it wasn't 50 clients, some of which needed help with not being able to track an Oreo. And I just wasn't, I wasn't able to have any sort of relatability to that at the time.
Yeah. It sounds like that was the right decision. How did you make it right with those other clients that you had to let go?
Yeah, so if they were on, so I know at Ripbody we obviously have the 3-month commitment. For me, it's 4. And so anyone within that 4 would got a refund, a full refund, no matter how many months they'd had. I want to leave that person feeling like A, they had that initial help from me, and B, they weren't going to be financially out of pocket. Okay. And I had the funds to do that. It wasn't a problem. And it was just letting them know that where they were in their journey was not something that I was able to facilitate the way I thought I could. So I took on, rightly so, the ownership for the relationship ending.
Yeah, and you treated them well. And that was another thing I remember you saying that was so important to me as well. And that comes back to our Warren Buffett quote, right?
Well, remember as well, Andy, I had none of that in my first. So I don't think, and maybe until this process with you, maybe even this podcast, I don't think I quite realized how much that initial coaching experience had on me. It's my North Star for everything. The customer experience, the client experience is at the center of every decision I make, good or bad. That they come first.
So what is good coaching to you?
Wow, what a question. What was good coaching?
I'm sorry. Just straight uppercut here. Just bam. No pressure.
Yeah. It would be easier to say what bad coaching is, right? But good coaching is a relationship that's built on trust. And it's a collaboration with the knowledge that the person doing the coaching is the sat nav. They are the map, but you are in the driving seat, and to me, that's the best coaching relationship. We might have to take a U-turn. We might have to go a different route sometimes, but if you're always driving, I'm going to get you there. But if you step from the front seat into the back seat, the car goes off the road and then we're done. So that's my opinion.
So could you just clarify here, like you as a coach, you are the sat nav, but the client is the one that's driving. You're going to give the advice, but sometimes things are going to change and we're going to need to reroute. But you'll always do your best to, okay. I like that analogy,
Yeah.
So then that was roughly 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago now. I understand that you've kept the clients that have stayed with you.
Correct.
So your 20 is now, was it 15?
Yeah, it's 12.
12. Yeah, okay. Yep. And you haven't, or didn't, you chose not to kick your business back into gear. Why was that? What is it that you've been doing since?
Yeah, so where are we? Summer 23, I went from the 50s to 22. I remember 22 very vividly. And then I wasn't actively seeking new clients for a long time because of said situation. I wasn't in the headspace to be able to do that. So 2024, I utilized some of the skills that I gained in that mentorship program that I spoke about to flex different creative muscles. I did some marketing for a couple of companies local to me, paid the bills. It allowed me to stress-free, which was very important for 2024. Coach the ones that I had and give them everything. And that was, I really enjoyed last year. It was what I needed to get back to that sort of re-energized sort of, okay, I'm ready to get back into higher level coaching, allowing it to take up more headspace.
Yeah. And so then that brings us to a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
When I put up the bat signal for saying that I was looking to hire a new coach, an experienced coach. And then I put people through the necessary gauntlet to, see what they were made of. So you get that email. And then how was that for you?
I'll be completely honest. Rip Body is not the first time I've seen an email like that has piqued my interest in the last maybe 6 or 7 months.
Yep.
But you're the first one that I applied for and spent a lot of time on making sure I was the best candidate. When I saw that email, I thought, been wanting to start coaching at a higher level with being more proactive. And I knew that the dancing around on social media wasn't the route I was going to go down to get more clients in my own business. So when that email came through, it was perfect timing, in my opinion. And I have been a follower of you for, if it feels like at least a decade. I've been on your email list a very, very long time. I've known of you for a very long time. I know the brand, I know the reputation, I know the level of results, I know the level of clients. And to me, it's like, if I don't give everything to Andy to make it that I'm the clear and obvious choice, I'll regret it. So I did. I believe it come across in the things that I've shown you over the last couple of months, the level of detail I went into, the research that went into it. I wanted to show Andy and Matt what it would be like if I was working with them on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
That was my North Star in this process. And I gave it everything, and here we are.
Here we are. In the second round, a few of the questions asked were simulated client check-ins. So that's one of the ways that I get to see how people are, really. And it's very telling. It's very interesting. Thank you, Sam. I think I consider us lucky. I think for both of us, it was right place at the right time. I'm excited to be working with you. One thing I've told you before, I'm very low on compliments, high on straight into the nitpicking detail. I don't tend to miss anything, and it can drive people mad. But, it doesn't mean that I'm not grateful. I'm looking forward to working together on things. I know that we've discussed this, but I will just say it here for the listeners. So the way that I've done things in the past is how I intend to do things in the future. The coaching is kind of a tag team. So Coach Sam, you'll be taking the lead just as Matt takes the lead, but I'll be CC'd or silently CC'd on the conversations so that I can be commenting and we can be having a back and forth on the best move. I say silently CC'd, it's actually this feature within our email app where we're able to have a conversation thread alongside things, so that really the coaching is, yes, it's led by the individual coach and you will be the one taking the lead, but I'll be able to provide input as well. And I find that super fun. Matt certainly enjoyed it. You said that you're super up for that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And the thing for me that's been wonderful over the last few years of working with Matt, and that I'm excited to work with you on, is as I teach, I learn, right? So you are a competent coach. I don't need to be watching over anything, just as is Matt. But Matt seeing how I do things, me seeing how Matt does things, I'm learning there as well. We're improving everything together. All of the templates, guidance, all these things that we have for clients, we're able to just make better and better. And that's only going to accelerate with you on the team. So you have an incredible attention to detail. I'm super excited to have you. And let's crush it moving forward. I know that we're going to scale things slowly. We're going to have 5 people first, right? Yeah, we'll take it from there. So if you're listening and you're interested, please do go to the coaching page on ripbody.com. That's ripbody.com/coaching. And I'll be in touch. there is a chance by the time you listen to this that those spaces are all gone. I imagine they're just going to go like that, which is just tends to be how it is. But we're going to make sure that we nail things, because there are no redos. We don't sacrifice quality. So yeah.
I'm excited, Andy. I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too, man. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. It won't be the last time. Yeah, appreciate it. Let's rock this.
Cheers. Thanks, Andy.